When we talk about making a shank, what we're talking about is an improvised cutting utensil. Okay, this is not high science, this is not forge welding, this is not anything strong. I'll start with talking about this shank that I made when I was a kid. I don't know that my mom ever knew that I had taken one of her tablespoons, stainless steel. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and I will tell you that it was my good fortune that I didn't take one of my mom's silver tablespoons, because it turned out, unbeknownst to me, that we were using silver all the time. But anyway, as a child, I picked one of my mom's tablespoons because I had seen something on TV about a prison shank being made out of a spoon. And I took that spoon and I figured out with a hammer how to flatten it, and I figured out how to put a curl on the end that you could hold in your finger. I don't know why I thought of that. And I took that stainless steel spoon, I got it as flat as I could get it, and I just started sharpening it. And I will tell you now, that's plenty sharp. I don't imagine that stainless steel is going to be great for long-term cutting. I obviously just used the shape of the spoon. Don't go take one of your mom's stainless steel spoons. Go to the thrift store and pick up one for $1 or something. But this is what I'm going to show you. Is a piece of steel that I picked up at a construction site, and it was trash, I can assure you of that. And I believe that this is a strapping material that is used in holding bricks up against framework or something like that. And I knew that it's not going to be great steel, but it was thin. So I picked up a couple of these, and I just took this end was the same as on that end, and I just stuck it in a vise and bent it, and it snapped. But if you take a scrap piece of steel laying around, and I'm telling you that you could do the same thing with a thick enough piece of aluminum, and we're going to do it with plastic in a little bit. If you took a scrap piece of metal laying around and you took a piece of rock, this is of course a concrete stepping stone that has been broken, it's just cement. If you took something like this, just the most basic of materials, and you use this to file it, to grind it down, you have to work at it for a little bit. It's not going to go easy. But if you took something like this and you just worked it, you could develop for yourself a cutting edge on this. I can already see where I'm starting to grind that down. Now, this is the primitive way. Take a file and do the same thing. It's much faster. And you just hold it at an angle. We're not going to quibble over what angle that is, 30 degrees, 40 degrees, 20 degrees. You are making an improvised cutting tool, and you just start working it. And I know that I used a file on that spoon shank that I made. I found one laying around in my grandfather's workshop or something, and you can see how that is cutting away steel. And the camera might be able to pick up the dust, the steel shavings that are falling on the table. And you work this like this, you're going to get yourself an improvised cutting edge. It's not going to be a 58 Rockwell hardness. It's not going to be something that you want to use in the kitchen. But we're talking about in a survival situation. We're talking about in a primitive situation. You get to use what you have at hand to create what you can. This is almost there. This is the kind of thing you do to make a shank. Because you're doing what you can to get an edge That's already there. I could cut myself on that. You don't have to have professional setup to do that. Now, I would tell you that when you've got access to even the cheapest of sharpening equipment, then use it. A file is not hard to get a hold of. A shank is an improvised cutting tool. And if you were to take, this is a seriously thin, cheap plastic knife. But if I grind this on this concrete, I'm going to end up with a thin edge. And if you ground it in such a way, you could put a point on this. And I would tell you what they did in the old days, and I don't mean 1980s. I mean the pre-Iron Age and before the advent of iron tools. Bone splinters could be made into knives. Large bones can be cracked and sharpened in such a way that they can cut and pierce, and bone needles and bone knives and things like that. So when we're talking about making a shank, we're talking about an improvised cutting tool, and I want you to think about what that looks like and what that entails, because when you understand that you can improvise a cutting tool from a scrap piece of metal, then you begin to realize that all of this is not necessarily rocket science, that it's just a way of obtaining a cutting edge, and it can be done in a lot of different ways. I hope you'll subscribe. I hope that is of interest to you. Comment. Let me know what you think. Like us. Thanks.